drink. You're listening to the Verhoeven Effect podcast. I'm Conlon.
I'm Nathan.
And we have an extra special episode as we're doing another Paul Verhoeven movie on the Verhoeven Effect.
Yeah, imagine that.
I guess I was sort of dead set on doing it in chronological order, but we didn't want to just jump into RoboCop without giving its just due of lots of research. So we went with Basic Instinct, which is a movie I have not seen, but is infamous, so of course I know about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Basic Instinct came out in 1992, directed by Paul Verhoeven, written by Joe Esterhaus, who is basically like a screenwriting rock star for as much as that can happen to screenwriters. He's very unique in his position in Hollywood, and he no longer works in Hollywood as far as I know. He just writes books. But interesting background on him. He was like a Hungarian immigrant. Like he was born in 1944 in Hungary, and like as they're refugees.
Not a good time to be born in Hungary.
Yeah. And so they're refugees trying to leave Hungary and get to America, and they finally did when he was like about 8 or something like that. And he has several autobiographies. The one I read is called Hollywood Animal. I guess I'll get into it later. He's the hero of the book, but he's also just, in much the way when we read that Bret Hart autobiography, it's like, yeah, he seems to be right and like really good at his craft, but he's also just cheating on his wife constantly.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a blasé mention in his autobiography. Like, I guess he could have never mentioned it, but but it's always like a surprise, like, oh, we got divorced. Like, oh my God.
No, I can't believe it.
But yeah, he's like the hero of his book, because in his mind, like, the writing process is the most important process. Like, a movie doesn't get made if nothing's written. Although when you start to learn about Hollywood, that's not true. Pages are coming in on the day, and they've already blocked out some action scene that they're already shooting that isn't written into the screenplay yet. And he kind of sees the writers as like the kind of ultimate creation of whether it is, and he kind of sees like everybody else as just technicians that are just like putting his words to film. So he doesn't necessarily see them as like creatives, or not as important as his creativity is.
Oh, okay.
But that's his point of view. But also there's like so many things that like I don't like. It might be unique for him and like never for anybody else, but he's basically like, I'm a writer, but he talks about like he gets like say in like shooting locations, actor choices, like all this stuff where it's like, and I know from lots of other stories, like like nobody gives a crap about the writers, so they are not given this kind of leeway. But the amount of money they paid him, like, okay, it's like, okay, I guess because he probably still holds a record for like largest money ever spent on a screenplay. So, but yeah, like because famously for this movie, he wrote it on spec. He just had like a stream of consciousness one day and just like wrote Basic Instinct. And a spec script, it's like, it means written on speculation. Like, I think I can sell this. Where it's like, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to like go to producers, give your ideas, see which one they like, and then you write the screenplay based on like the idea you pitch them, and then like you kind of like give them what you have as you go, and then they give you notes. And like, he hated that.
Okay.
Because it's either the producers just need to have their ideas in the screenplay so they can have their fingerprints on it, or they're like parroting market research which also doesn't help your movie. It's just like, this is what people are buying right now. It's like, yeah, but this movie's going to be made 4 years from now. So,
Yeah.
um, so he wrote it on spec. It got sent around because he was already in Hollywood, and it got a bidding war on it, and so it ended up the producers at Carolco, which produced this movie, which is unintentional because last week's movie is also a Carolco movie, and they did get bought by Studio Canal, and they no longer exist. So.
Oh, okay.
And actually, in this movie, in the production credits, there it's a Carolco / Studio Canal production.
Okay.
Yeah, so they bought the script for $3 million, which is at that time, like, that's more than some directors were getting, and like an actor and like star actors were getting. So of course everybody was mad at him.
Yeah, right.
He also said it was a competition because I guess the record around the same time too is that Shane Black got like almost $2 million for The Last Boy Scout.
Oh, really? Okay.
So Esterhaus wanted to beat that. Because before that, he also held the record before where he got like $1 million for one of his screenplays. But yeah, it's Joe Esterhaus. I think I'll talk more after. But yeah, it stars Michael Douglas, Sharon Stone, which is her star-making performance.
Yep.
It's also kind of interesting because, like, in the book, they're talking about how, like, she was 34 at the time she did this, and that was kind of so, like, you know, especially for women, that was considered like over the hill, and like this is like her start of her career essentially. And George DeZunda, which the last time we saw him was in the 79 Salem's Lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I recognized him right away. I mean, he's like the character actor and everything.
Yeah. Also, yeah, this is a sex thriller, so yeah, that seems synonymous with Michael Douglas. But when I looked up his stuff, it's like Fatal Attraction, Basic Instinct, and then like Disclosure, and that's kind of like the three. But I felt like he did like 8 of them or something. But it's really kind of just those 3.
Yeah, it just made an impact.
Yeah,
especially this one, and yeah, Fatal Attraction probably resonated more with like a wider audience, but yeah, this one definitely.
But I think Disclosure was like a year later, so they're. But also, like, Michael Douglas was 47 when he did this. So.
Yeah.
So like I've never seen this before. Not that I mean I don't know. I mean I always heard about it. Like it's one of those movies where it's like you know about through cultural osmosis, but I just never bothered to pick it up. I imagine like when I was a teenager or something, like it's probably been like some kind of holy grail to find at your parents' house. Like this is basically porn. But
yeah,
that's how like I remember like kids at school would talk about it, but I was never one to indulge in it. So I had more sneaky ways of renting stuff from the library or checking it out, and you get like and they only had like PG and G movies, and you get like Police Academy 3 Beach Patrol, and there's like a scene where like some ladies are like or suntanning their back, and then like somebody scares them and they get up and they're naked.
Somehow that slipped past the library. Huh?
Well, it's rated PG, so.
Yeah, I discovered this in like I think 95 was when I watched it. Of course, I would have been well over the age of 18 by then. So, and it was something you watch from like a video store.
Yeah.
You rent like 15 movies and you're just watching them all weekend. And I remember this one stood out as a particularly cool looking movie. And it was, you know, to me, it's like a Hitchcock movie, but the main characters actually have sex and they show it. Other than that, like the story and parts of the soundtrack, very Hitchcock.
Oh yeah. That's what Verhoeven was going for. So
yeah, and he achieved it, and some really like beautiful city scenery shots and beautiful houses and cool cars and all that. This is a movie like its look and its soundtrack kind of saved it from being sort of like, okay. Yeah, it had a great look and feel to it.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Well, yeah. Andamont says that like a lot of stuff he did for this movie basically got stolen for like well, other movies, but he didn't put that out. But the one he pointed out is like it got into a lot of like commercial stuff.
yeah, oh yeah, I could see that. Definitely. Like that amazing house she was at just by the sea. It's like, wow, is that a real place? And it is.
Yeah. Last time I saw it, the trivia had on it, last time it was sold for $14 million.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, it looks like
It's
that.
probably way more now. Even like that one that with the Hazel lady, she lives in like this little small house in San Francisco. That's probably worth like $5 million right now
Right.
or something.
Well, that's a funny thing. Like when we were watching 48 Hours, and it's like the gritty San Francisco, or even go back further, like Dirty Harry. You know, it's like, yeah, it's San Francisco. It's a dirty city. It's full of crime. It's like, yeah, now a shack there costs $10 million. It's like the city has so much money they don't know what to do with it all, and everyone, yeah, the people that live there are just miserable for the most part because you can't afford anything.
Can't afford it. So yeah, it's
if you're a cop or a fireman in San Francisco, like what do you do? Live with 15 people in a what are those called? Storage crate.
Now you live in Oakland, but now Oakland's like even too rich for people. Now people are just like going even farther.
Yeah, that's sustainable.
You probably got people. You probably got cops in San Francisco that probably live in Sacramento or something.
Yeah. Or they got into real estate when it was cheap, and they're like, "I'm just waiting for my pension," but they have a net value of like $20 million.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
But yeah, it's like, I mean, that's what, like, you hear a bunch of stories down there where it's basically just every car that gets parked anywhere is just broken into. It's people looking for drugs. So it's just, and like, I'm sure the people that are like, well, if anybody has a car, they must be super rich. And so there's just this huge divide where it's like you're either a millionaire or you're homeless. That's what San Francisco is.
Yeah, the whole country's heading that way, and everyone's like, okay, like, yeah, this is great.
And
we've always been one earthquake away from that whole framework collapsing too. So it's like, yeah.
And there's so many podcasts I listen to because a lot of like video games journalism took place in San Francisco, and like almost all those people don't live in San Francisco anymore. In fact, like half of them moved to New Jersey, which is weird.
South Carolina. That's another. Imagine if they had like a real bone shaker there. I mean, like a 9.9. Yeah. And it's just, what would it cost to rebuild it? Like $4 trillion. I mean, they would just be like, yeah, we're done. Just, okay, all of the other Western states, you can cut us off from the Colorado River now. We're all moving. We made it so expensive you can't rebuild it.
I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, you had some type of devastation like that. I imagine there are a lot of people leave, and then the real estate goes down, and then it's like, oh, now we can do this again. San Francisco is used to just rebuilding itself, so it's probably not a problem.
I mean, well, if you had a 9.8 or something, there would be no structures standing. There would be nothing left. It was like the worst possible scenario. But yeah, I've always wondered that about California. It's like those insurance companies, like half the insurance companies in the country just vaporize. It's like, yeah, because they're holding how much are they holding in a state that's like,
well, and how much money they're making just on like the idea of it.
Yeah, I don't know.
And that they never intend on actually paying out.
No, they just run to the government. So yeah, I've always wondered about that. It's like, yeah, that San Francisco looks like one of the coolest places in the world to live, to see it. I mean, could never afford to live there, and probably too many people for me. But when you watch movies like this, and there's some other great San Francisco movies, and it's like, oh, this place looks amazing. It's like, I could see why people live there. It's like, this is cool. I don't think it really gets super hot there either.
No, it's actually like way colder than you think it is.
Yeah.
You got to be prepared for both. Like, it's going to be screaming hot, but then it's also, because it's by the bay, it's like you're going to have a sweater in the morning. That's just how it is. And it's going to be foggy all the time too, especially in the morning. But
Yeah.
That,
Oh yeah.
that morning fog is a real chiller. So, and then it becomes California weather. So,
Yeah. And then the sun goes down and something else happens.
um, yeah. So, if Act One, like I said, it's another Karako picture. Extreme Measures was one last week, not intentional. We just picked the movie. We have like a credit sequence where it's kind of like fractured, like it's a broken mirror or something, and vaguely kind of out of focus human shapes fucking in the background or something.
Yeah, it was something weird. Like, oh, is this where they got the idea for Seven? Like, what is it?
There's a lot of like comparisons between this and like Silence of the Lambs, which is a year earlier, but like this script was already like made like before
Yeah.
that. So, but you could draw some similarities there if you wanted to.
Oh yeah, it's a dark. I mean, at its core, it's a dark movie. I mean, it's a really, but there's so much like Silence of the Lamb was always on message. Like this can get almost corny and ridiculous at
Oh
some
yeah,
point,
yeah.
and then just turn the corner on you real sharp. It's like, okay,
Well, I mean, like the sort of the history as I was written is like he wrote it just in stream because he was a Joe Esterhaus was like a journalist, and he's used to like, and he really liked to do like research on stuff, like find like the real thing and put that to film. Like that's what he liked doing. Like the first script he wrote was a movie called Fist, which is about a like truck driver union starring Sylvester Stallone.
okay,
It was interesting because like some like lady, I didn't get her name. She was like some sort of producer. She discovered his writings. She thought he would make a good screenwriter, and so he got contracted to write this movie. And so yeah, he did a lot of research on it, and most of his money was spent on like traveling and doing research. And so he got like 80 grand for it, but he said because he spent like 40 grand doing research, which is like, man, what kind of research are you doing? Is that just all bribes?
Yeah, you like doing just copying whole books at 10 cents a page. How much of that research was white powder? Because it's the 80s.
Yeah. Well, then it was the 70s.
Oh, 70. Well, yeah, it was probably on the West Coast. That was still a thing.
Yeah.
Even then.
He has some funny butting heads with Sylvester Stallone because he's like coming off of Rocky, and in the movie the guy dies, and Sylvester Stallone's like, "Oh, America's not gonna expect. They don't want to see Rocky die." It's like, yeah, but you're not Rocky. It's like that doesn't matter to America. It's one and the same. And he was probably right, but
Sylvester Stallone is actually very intelligent on some levels, but yeah like he does he seems to, as long as his career has been and for all the ups and downs it's had, he seems to be like, he's kind of like a Schwarzenegger. Like he's like, he's really smart underneath all that, and can keep it together to a certain, not in every aspect, but in most.
And then so he did that movie, and it kind of flops, and he spends like 5 years just writing screenplays that don't get produced, but all of Hollywood likes his scripts. And so his rates just keep going up, even though none of his movies get produced.
Oh, he's getting he's getting like just reputation credits.
Yeah.
You need a script. This guy can make a script. Oh, we don't know if we'll like it or not, but yeah.
And then he does a rewrite on Flashdance, and that's his first hit movie.
Okay, I can see that.
Somebody else wrote a completely different Flashdance, but it was about like these, like it was called Flashdancing, but it was about like basically like pretty women in Toronto that are doing this on the side. We're just like wealthy business and pay like these people that look like they're penthouse models to like strip in front of them for like outrageous amounts of money. And so yeah, he wrote that screenplay. It was a hit. Like he was kind of mad at first. It was like, that the critics hate it. It's like we're doomed. And it didn't open that well, but then like the next 6 weeks, it like increased its numbers. It's like, oh, okay, we got a hit.
Yeah.
It's like, it's critic proof. And so that was like his first hit. He's talking about his like really his big. He talks about the really big hit, which a movie I never heard out called Jagged Edge. Have you ever heard of it?
Oh yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because he said that was like his huge hit. And I looked at the box office and said it made like 40 million. I was like, that doesn't really seem like a huge hit, but like I adjusted it for inflation in 85 $85, it's $100 million nowadays. It's like, oh, okay, I guess. Guess
Well,
that's
it's
a lot of
also a
money.
movie that like resonated because it's essentially it's very similar to this. Like it's oh it's more focusing on mental illness than sex, but yeah, it's a very very memorable performances in that movie.
Um, but yeah, that's another one I haven't seen. So I was just he kept referring to it being a huge hit. I just never heard of it before. So,
Oh yeah, it's a
but
good
also
movie.
I also looked at all the other movies that came out that year, and it's like crazy how like the like the 70th highest box office like has more like cultural value than that movie does. That because like I think Weird Science came out that year, made like 20
Yep.
million, and that's still people know what Weird Science is. So um but anyway, so like one of so like he I forget what movie he was working on, but he wanted to do lots of research because that's what he was like banking on, that kept being authentic. And and some producer told him like, no, just use your imagination.
Yeah, make it up.
So this was the movie that was just a stream of consciousness, completely make it up, no research. uh had it sent around, and it got to Verhoeven. He got attached to it. He wanted to make it, but he wanted to change some things which Joe Asterhouse didn't write. And like what's circling around is the first draft, and then
Yeah.
and so they have like a big argument, Verhoeven and Asterhouse, and then Verhoeven goes off with his people to try to like rewrite the things he wants rewritten. And then they come back, and Verhoeven actually apologized to Joe Esterhaus and says like, "There's no other way to do it. We got to shoot your draft."
Yep.
He's like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Yes." And he's like, never had a director or a producer like apologize to him before, so that he like earned him like, oh, this guy's like, oh, you can trust this guy for life.
Yeah.
um.
He didn't lie to my face. Wow. This is a Hollywood miracle.
So yeah, the movie, they shot the first, they shot the first draft of the movie. So if that's why I think like this has like there's a lot of standout moments in this movie, but like if you like watch it and try to pick it apart, it's pretty easy to pick it apart because it's not
Yeah.
really meant to.
This is not a movie meant to hold up to scrutiny. This is a
No.
movie where you're just along for the ride, and there's some really cool stuff in it if you're willing to forget a lot of other stuff, and it's satisfying. Yeah, but this is a movie that's satisfying for me on the strength of individual performances and cinematography. As
Yeah.
a whole movie, no, it's not, and that's why it
But
doesn't hold up well with a lot of critics either.
yeah. Well, also like the thing is like there is clever writing to this. There are things that stand out the writing,
Excellent writing in this. Yeah,
even though like if you look at it, it's like this isn't a great story, but it's somehow still good.
yeah.
So
This
it's
is
a
how
weird
you
thing.
would imagine people would act to lead these things to be able to happen.
Yeah.
It's like you hope that like all police are stupid. Or it's like, yeah, just go with that and let's see what happens. Like let's let that play out. What happens? Well, people die. Oh well, oops. Yeah.
Well, it's,
Yeah.
it's kind of a fun thing where you just follow around impossible people.
Yeah.
It's like, what does she do? It's like, well, she inherited millions of dollars and she doesn't have to do anything. It's like, okay, well, then that character can basically do whatever they want.
Yep.
Which isn't like, doesn't resonate with common people, but it is like exciting, which is what her character is. It's like her whole character is like, I wish I could be that open and honest and have absolutely nothing, be responsible for absolutely nothing. Like
Yeah. I have
nothing will ever
nothing
fall.
to lose. I could be a complete it's just like I am in complete control even when it seems like I'm not. Sex is just a tool. I'm basically a psychopath who likes to do murders in the open and write stories about them and just be like, haha, I did it again. It's a fascinating character study.
Yeah.
It's again, like you said, completely unrealistic people, but it's like, oh well, if someone likes that, it was like that, then yeah.
Which
It's
I'm
like
not.
Hannibal Lecter was scary and manipulative too, but with the caveat he got caught.
Yeah.
Like he's like, oh, he is in a cage now forever. Well, conceivably forever. It's like, yeah, but he was an evil, crazy, like impossible guy. A guy with a 200 IQ who's just going to run around and be a cannibal and critique culture. It's like, oh, that's fascinating.
um. But yeah, so we have Paul Verhoeven and Jan de Bont are back working again. Jan de Bont's his cinematographer. He works with him a lot in his Dutch movies. He wanted to work with him on RoboCop, but that wasn't a union shoot, and Jan de Bont was already in the union. So this is their first American film together.
Okay.
So start out with a shot of a ceiling mirror.
Always know something good's going to happen when those are in play.
I'm not sure if because that was like a thing for a while. Did this start that, or was that just kind of always a thing, or was
I think
that like
it's always been a pervy thing? Like who would want that except like sex weirdos in California?
I don't know. Like was that in like I don't know, like Scarface or something like that?
I'm sure it was.
Okay.
It was seen as like it's like kind of mirrors on the ceiling are what I call like Roman indulgence rituals. It's like, oh, what's the weirdest thing you could imagine someone doing? It's like, oh, mounting a mirror on your ceiling so you could watch yourself with whoever you were in bed with. It's like, now I try to put myself in that position. I'm like, oh, no. I don't want to see my face or anything. But like really weirdo narcissistic people would love it. Oh, yeah, that turns my crank. So, yeah, that's what that I consider that like mirror on the ceiling is a classic like symbol of what I call Roman indulgence of like, what's the worst perverted thing you could do? And it's like, yeah, that's one of them.
See, I'd just be worried about it falling on me the whole entire time.
That's exactly what I would be worried about. Because, if you're like, what kind of contractor are you going to hire to, hey, because if it's like high quality, like, real lead glass, like the real good stuff, it's going to weigh like 100 pounds to cover that much area. It's like, yeah, it's just going to crush you if it falls on you and then break into sharp pieces. But somehow that never comes into the picture. It's like you got to look for a, like, oh, I'm looking on, Craigslist or whoever, Angie's List for a contractor. And it's like, discretion a must. It's like, what are we building?
So we have people revealed having sex, and so we pan down for the mirror, or why do you actually say it? It's a tilt. And see them having sex. There's a lady ties the guy's arms to the bed, and then the lady just stabs the dude several times with an ice pick.
And they show it too, and they don't like pan away. It's just like, no, we're going to watch this guy take one to the neck.
Well, they have they made a really good dummy, because there's like one shot where like the ice pick just like goes like straight through his face, it's like just for a moment. It was like, wait, did they just actually stab that dude in the face? But it was like just enough. Also, he's covered in blood at this point too, so it's easier to hide. So
yeah.
And
the way it's filmed, and with like the contrast of like the white silk scarf, because it's all expensive stuff he's being tied up with. And the way it's filmed, and it's a real it's one of those grinding erotic sex scenes. It's not just people casually like bouncing around or whatever, because it's filmed kind of in shadow, but you can see a lot and you can pretty much guess what's going on. It's a very believable sex scene.
And the hair is in front of her face, so we don't exactly see who it is.
Excuse me. Nice. And then we cut right away to like this guy's just taking one to the neck and showing it. It's like that's such a contrast of like, oh wow, sex and death, like right there.
Yeah. So then we cut to Detective Nick Curran, played by Michael Douglas. I just have him as Curran, or I guess it's Curran, right? Not Curran.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Curran, not Quran.
Yeah.
Detective Curran.
It's played by Michael Douglas. And we have Detective Gus Moran, played by George DeZunda. They show up at the crime scene. Johnny Boz is the victim. He used to be like a rock star. He had a couple hit songs. He's kind of like coasting on his past achievements.
Yeah, he runs a nightclub. Yeah.
Then they introduce Captain Talcott, who's Chelsea Ross, who I always remember as like the crafty veteran, like over the hill pitcher in Major League.
Okay, yeah, I remember that performance.
He's just observing, because I guess like Mr. Boz here was like contributing to like the mayor's like electoral campaign, so now there's like extra eyes on this case. So
And they put that right up front, like,
yeah.
yeah, this is why I'm here. Like they're just openly like, yeah, this is all political. It's all money and influence, and we need this resolved.
Um, and then they reveal like all the cum stains all over the sheet with a UV light reveal, which was that like a first time that was in movies?
I don't remember it before that.
Okay.
Because I know in this movie they were wearing the big goofy glasses to make it work. Now you
Yeah.
don't do that. It just you shine it around.
Yeah, you just gotta turn off all the other lights.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a big thing that's like your local news team will do.
Go into a hotel room and put one of those on. It looks like someone just sprayed white out all over the room with a cannon. It's like, did they stage that, or is that really going on? Because like in this movie, the quantity of like male sexual fluids is like, oh wow, okay, this guy's really like that's not normal. Okay, that's like
is
the best sex you ever had in your life times 10.
Who's Joe Rogan's friend? Oh yeah, I see a lot of friends, but he does the other Tom Segura. He's the way he always describes it is like that man was slinging ropes.
Gross. That's vile and funny all at the same time.
Yes, yeah. They also have they show that they see the guy's flaccid penis, but Verhoeven really wanted to put a erect penis for the first time in American cinema. And he just couldn't get it to happen.
Nope, they wouldn't let it. They denied him his art.
Which I haven't seen like his Dutch like sex thrillers, but they just don't care over there, so
Yeah,
it's fine.
They don't. See, that's the weird. That is the weird divide between American and global cinema. It's like they'll show sex in a movie, like, and it's like, yeah, bring your family to this movie. We don't care. Nudity is natural, but like, we'll like freak out about that. But if someone's being decapitated with a chainsaw, yeah, leave that in. Just don't show her boobs. Just it's like that's how we're. But if you try to show movies where people are just being torn apart with farm equipment, some of those countries are like, yeah, that's really wrong. That's not really a good thing to fill people's heads with. I kind of reject that argument. I don't think video games and movies cause violence. I think craziness and hopelessness cause violence, but still, it's a weird divide between us and the rest of the world. It's like, oh, you want to see someone's head blown apart with a shotgun? Yeah, we can do that. Well, how about if we show a nipple? No. Nipple bad.
Well, I remember like the a lot of the people that escaped to America to kill the indigenous people to create their own country, or a lot of them were prudes, and we are raised up from those processes.
Yeah, you just pulled apart that guy's family, him and his family, with a hatchet, but you can't mention sex. It's like you guys are really messed up somehow. It's just like not good.
But yeah, in Europe,
I've only lived in this country, and this is all I know. And I even know it's like, this is kind of weird. But then, of course, I also have like an arsenal of guns, and I'm really fat, so I'm a typical American in every way.
I was like Europe, but they have like sex in their commercials, so that's how blasé it is there too.
Yeah, I don't think so. I've never found sex and nudity to be something either very intriguing or disturbing to me.
Yeah,
and I was never that way with my son either. Like, don't look at dirty stuff on the internet. I was like, don't give my credit card out on the internet was what I said. I don't know what to look at. Just don't be like going into dad's wallet and to go beg the Russians for my password.
I mean, I don't object to the content of this movie, but I definitely don't want to like watch this movie with other people.
Oh yeah, no. That's where it gets kind of with strangers now. Movies for me have just become a solo experience in the last 5 years. It's like it all happens right here. I don't go to theaters anymore. And not because I'm afraid of COVID or anything, but just because it's like, oh, I hate going to the movie theaters. It's like I like going to the oddball movies. Like me and Grayson would go to like the place that only shows movies from overseas. It's like, well, it's just going to be us, buddy. So we got the whole theater to ourselves.
Yeah.
Last time I went to a big movie where it was like I had to sit in the front with my head up, and people were talking and had their damn phones on, like the whole movie, like just
Yeah.
bright screen. It's like, what are you doing? What? This movie ticket was like $14. Like, you're just wasting your time, my time.
Yeah, it was Avatar and The Dark Knight that really like, yeah, I don't want to see movies with other people because it was both like packed theaters and I had to sit up front, and it's like never again. I'm watching movies on Tuesdays at noon.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. I know there is such a thing as a theater experience, but I'm getting to the point like my TV screens are getting so big. It's like, well, this is damn near. I do agree with David Lynch. Like, you should never watch this stuff on your phone
Yeah.
unless you just have to speed watch it for some reason. At least a good TV and high definition is probably acceptable. But yeah, the big screen is like, it's a cool idea, but it's like, unless I can buy every seat in the theater and just know that I'm going to be the only one in there, I'm not interested.
Yeah, the only thing that I find like, oh yeah, the audience helped this movie is usually comedies. I remember like
Yeah,
like,
yeah, I can see that.
like South Park, the movie that was great with an audience because they just loved everything. And when I saw Clerks 2, which I think is like a great movie in some respects, but it's like when I rewatch it, it's like, oh, this was not as funny as it was in the theater with the packed audience that was laughing
Yeah.
at everything.
Yeah.
Whereas, oh yeah, so yeah, there's drugs at the scene too, so that's like an extra mix, like, you know, everything. Also, I guess this movie is like somewhat controversial because AIDS was big at the time, and like here's just like a freewheeling sex movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's also a fantasy, but yeah, it's
Yeah. Which I don't know, like you listen to the stories from Joe Esterhaus, like he's just talking about like having sex with all these like Hollywood starlets and stuff like that, and producers getting mad at him is like, she wouldn't sleep with me, like, you're just a writer.
Yeah.
It's like, all these women were basically forced to like to advance their careers, sleep with all these guys. It's like, what a horrible place. And Esterhaus has multiple stories of just like picking up women at bars, and then like the next morning finding written on the mirror, "Welcome to the wonderful world of AIDS," which he said had happened multiple times to him, and it was like the joke going around, which meant there was just like thousands of ladies that were trying to get jobs sleeping with all these dirty men. Hope it's a better place now.
I could not imagine. That's, yeah, when I hear those stories, I mean, it's no secret, like, I'm, monogamous. I've been married 25 years to the same person. It's like, I still, to this day, as a guy who's like almost 50, with all the experience I've had in the world and all the horrible things I've seen and people that I've known, could not imagine like just having sex with a complete stranger 2 hours after meeting them. It's like, that is such an alien. I would be so frightening. I'd be like, oh, don't look at me, I'm taking my pants off. I just couldn't. I would never feel comfortable enough. But I'm also not some arrogant psychopath with millions of dollars just flying on cocaine either. I'm sure that makes it better, that lubricates that behavior, but it's like this whole concept of just sleeping with just complete strangers.
Well, I mean, in the book, he can, like, he's not necessarily like condemning it in the book, but like you can see how. But he's not I don't know, like the worst person is basically Robert Evans. Like he says, like, Robert Evans is my friend. Every lie ever printed about him is true.
Yeah, he sounds like he's just a human. Just human
hedonism brought to life.
Sin.
Yeah,
it's like, Robert Evans is just sin. He's not evil. He's just sin.
Yeah. And you can see how like why all these like producers and stuff getting in trouble now is because they worship those guys. They thought those stories were cool, and they didn't think anybody was being taken advantage of. It's like, everybody's having fun, everybody gets a job, right? So
yeah, as long as everyone gets paid, it's like just stuff the money in the wound and it'll heal. It's like, no, you're hurting people.
But anyways,
yeah. Which has everything to do with this movie we're talking about.
Yeah.
So it works.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to see like imagine like, okay, this writer who's living a rock star lifestyle is writing a movie where basically somebody's living a rock star lifestyle and a murder on top of it.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, this is the one thing that's missing. This is my fantasy, what I'm jealous that I can't actually do.
Curran and Moran go to Catherine Trammell's house. It's one of her houses. This is
Yeah,
the one,
one of the amazing houses. Like, this is the one in San Francisco.
yeah. There they're met by Roxy, who's Catherine's friend.
Slash doppelganger.
Well, and her lesbian girlfriend too.
Yeah, well, I mean, they look alike.
Yeah, that's it. And then they're
Which comes into play later. So that's another thing I like about this movie. It's like, well, they're following through.
So they're sent elsewhere to her other multi-million-dollar home that's like on the beach. I don't know where that is, but I'm guessing it's near San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, it's wherever you can drive in an old, Chrysler police vehicle.
They find Catherine, played by Sharon Stone, smoking on the balcony. There's some neat stuff in the commentary where it's like Jan de Bont, just like, especially for Sharon Stone's, like her side of when they shoot her side, he just like hid mirrors in the background so it would cast off light in weird ways and make the scene more interesting.
Yeah, it does. I mean, everyone looks off in this movie, but not like they're ugly or anything, but it's just like, oh, real people don't look this way.
Yeah.
And it's done on purpose too.
Yeah. There's a lot of like brights and shadows and it's film noir in color and stuff like that. Yeah, that's why this movie looks so great. And like none of it looks realistic, but it looks cool, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Even though that home is real, it's like weird because how they light them when they're standing on the balcony and how like the blue of the ocean is, it looks like they're on a green screen, but no, that place is real.
No, yeah, it's amazing. I mean, if I had millions of dollars, I'd live in a place like that because, not to impress anyone, just it's amazing looking place. But really, in real life, like George Zunza is like that it would be two detectives like that in the real world, because that's what a lot of police detectives looks like. Well, now they're like tall and they look like former basketball players, but yeah, like that's he was kind of like the everyman in the story. It's like, what you're doing is crazy. It's like, yeah, don't get involved with this woman. She's a killer. I know.
Yeah, he's the only like good person in the entire movie.
Yeah.
Because all the other cops are also shitheads, except for Sam, who's like the cool guy who like actually analyzes all the evidence.
Yeah, the only guy doing police work, chasing his ego around, trying to screw everyone over, because that's how police departments work. You work this way, and then in Basic Instinct world, like all cops are narcissists.
Yeah. So he asked like Michael or Curran asked like, so were you dating Mr. Boz? And she was like, I wasn't dating him, I was fucking him.
Yeah. Which I guess back then, I'm trying to remember, like this was put together in the 80s, released in the early 90s. I guess that would be shocking dialogue. It's like nowadays, like, oh, everyone talks that way. It's like that wouldn't be seen as shocking to anyone.
Well, especially like for like a female character to sound like that brass and open, like that was probably a shocking at the time. And they asked like, Miss Trammell, are you sorry Mr. Boz is dead? And she goes, yeah, I liked fucking him.
Yeah. Good. It was he took me places,
so they leave. Then we have a Golden Gate Bridge reveal, just so you know that you're in San Francisco, just to make it sure.
Yeah, and that insurance building's always in the background when they're in the city.
Is that which one's the insurance building? Is that the Coy Tower?
Yeah, one looks like a spike.
Yeah, it's Coy Tower.
Yeah.
Or it might be called. Yeah, because there's some other huge building there that has like a really like generic corporate name to it, like the investment firm building or something like
Yeah.
that. But that triangle one is like, I believe it's called Koi Tower.
Well, it looks like a knife or ice pick, so that's
Yeah.
probably subliminally.
Oh
like,
yeah. Huh? Yeah. There you go. Verhoeven Effect.
yeah, doing the work.
Curran meets with an internal affairs psychologist. She's played by Janine Triplehorn.
Yeah, and her best performance yet. Actually, her first performance.
Yeah, she's like just out of Juilliard to do this.
Yeah.
Which may be why she's like, she does a fine job, but also she seems weird in it, but that also actually ends up working for her character.
Yeah, I never, because when I hadn't seen this in like 5 or 6 years, and when I was watching, I was like, I don't remember the character being this like odd and awkward. I always thought of her as this like a stronger, like she's the psychiatrist foil to his like manly, psychopathy.
Yeah. Then they basically have like a psychology or a session, and Curran says he stopped drinking, doing coke, and smoking. Good for a cop to stop doing those things.
And we find out why, because he's got a nickname and what he did.
He leaves, and she like expresses like longing feelings. So like, oh, they have a relationship. It's like, that's super weird. Another one of those things where it's like, this shouldn't be happening in reality, but like at this point you're just bought in. It's like, all right, whatever.
Yeah, everyone's doing this here.
Yeah, nobody seems to care. There's no consequences, so why does it matter?
Maybe in California, like sex with your therapist is normal. It's part of
the Then we have the squad going over like all the info they got from the crime scene, and I wrote there, I gotta like read Catherine's rap sheet, and then I figured, then I was like, what does a rap sheet mean? I guess it means record of arrest and prosecutions.
Okay, I never bothered to look that up. Okay.
So they don't look at her rap sheet because she doesn't have a rap sheet. They just kind of have her biography or whatever. So they go over like what's up with her. She says she graduated top of her class, magna cum laude at Berkeley, which is a very highfalutin college in the San Francisco area. It's not in San Francisco, but it's like next to Oakland or something.
Yeah.
It's like a super hippie college, but it's also seen as very like I don't think it's considered like a high
like Stanford.
No, it's not like that, but it's around that. It's kind of around that.
Yeah.
Or it's not like Ivy League, but it's like up there.
Yeah.
It's sort of like Northwestern, I'd say.
Yeah.
Where it's like it's a big
school for rich people and smart people.
Yeah, but it's like, they're in but it's not all the way up there. But yeah, she graduated with a degree in literature and psychology. Catherine's parents were rich, and so when they died in a boating accident, she inherited over $100 million,
which would be a huge amount of money back then. It's still a lot of money now, but back then it would have been like, now if they wrote this movie now, she'd be like a billionaire.
Yeah, she'd have to be a billionaire. She's also a writer, and last year she wrote a book that involved a retired rock and roll star that gets murdered by his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And so I have that to be in the plot point in the end of Act 1. As I feel like this probably existed before, but where like somebody was writing a book and then basically in the movie, like what happens in the book happens in real life.
Yeah, I think it has. Yeah.
I don't remember where, but I have to believe
he's done that, but that's more supernatural. I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there is something in the history and the archives of Alfred Hitchcock where something like that happened.
And something did happen in real life with that, where some lady wrote an essay called "How to Kill Your Husband and Get Away with It," and then she literally killed her husband.
Good for her. I mean, you gotta believe in yourself.
Now, interesting fact is that book was inadmissible as evidence in the trial, but she's found guilty anyway. So.
Of course it was, yeah. So it was her book, because the book was terrible advice, because she's got convicted. You failed, ma'am. 25 to life.
Yeah, I had something like a ghost gun in there. So I was reading an article that said she bought a ghost gun kit, shot her husband in the back while because he was like a culinary teacher at some college, and just shot him in the back one night and with a ghost gun.
Ghost gun, yeah. They're everywhere.
um, so we have Act 2. Curran's at home reading Catherine's book called Love Hurts, which was by Catherine Wolfe. That's her pen name. Love Hurts was the original title of this screenplay.
Okay, interesting.
But he like immediately changed it to Basic Instinct like 3 days later, but they kept that in there. He finds the added detail of like the guy who gets killed in the book of being tied up with a silk sheet as well as an ice pick as the murder weapon. So they're like, well, that's just too on the nose.
Yeah, I think she's telling us something, guys.
Cut to next day. There's a meeting with a psychologist. Here it's Stephen Tobolowsky as Dr. Lamont. He is like one of the ultimate character actors.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Here he still has hair, but he went bald pretty quickly, and he's been like he looked exactly like himself for like the last 40 years. So, or 30 years. But yeah, he's still around. He does does comedy, drama, whatever. He's there. Although there's a lot of comedians casting roles in this movie.
Oh yeah.
They're trying to figure out if Catherine is the killer and if it's a copycat killer, and they're just basically trying to figure out like the book is either an alibi or a blueprint, and they don't know which one it is. They have Wayne Knight showed up, the comedian, as ADA John Corelli, and he's concerned about like making the case stick to Catherine. Curran thinks she won't hide behind lawyers because he thinks that she's just too
arrogant.
Brazen. Yeah. I can handle this. Then we cut to Catherine's seaside vista again. Curran and Moran are there and they take her away. They say by arrest if necessary, and then she needs to go get dressed. And while they wait, like inside the house, Curran finds an article on the table about him shooting some tourists. And then Curran sees Catherine naked through a mirror. So this is some more.
This establishes the initial excitement and attraction. Yeah. She probably put that mirror there on purpose because that's how she thinks.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Paul Verhoeven says in the commentary. Like, it's like the mirror allows him to look at her without her seeing, but like he's like, but really, she's 2 steps ahead, so she wants him to see her.
Yeah.
And then Moran starts to read her rights, but then she just says, like, what do I need an attorney for? And leads them out to their own car. And then when they're driving over to the precinct, and Catherine asks for cigarettes, but Curran says he doesn't smoke anymore. And she says, yes, you do. And then she just pulls out cigarettes anyway that she has. He's like, I thought you didn't have cigarettes. And it's like, I looked, I guess I did.
Yeah, they're in a fancy, like, old 1930s cigarette case.
And then they talk about suspension of disbelief, which is kind of like fourth wall breaking. There's actually some stuff here in the movie that felt like this kind of like paved the way for like Scream, maybe. A Scream does it better, but the whole like kind of like meta fourth wall breaking horror movie kind of thriller stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the car scenes and interview scenes seem to be like, yeah, the audience is here too with us, and we're all talking openly, which was kind of cool because the rest of the movie wasn't really constructed that way. But whenever people were close and there was more than 2 people, it was always like, oh yeah, you're a part of this too. Yeah, so that's one of the things I liked about this movie. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Then she's talking about she's writing a new book and says it's about a detective who falls in love with the wrong woman and she kills him. So. Basically giving clues to the rest of the movie. So she's brought into the interrogation room. She waived her rights to an attorney. They tell her she can't smoke, but she does anyways. She's like, "What are you gonna do? Arrest me for smoking?"
Yeah.
She talks about how she liked having sex with Mr. Boz because he liked to experiment. Then Corelli and like everyone else in the room are like getting flustered and turned on by Catherine's answers because she's just like being, because basically she's just acting like, I don't know, like men's fantasies where it's just a lady who's just open about sex and wants it all the time. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, you're impossible. You don't exist.
Yeah, it just has no inhibitions about,
yeah.
you know.
Also, I guess I should talk about like how this scene is like lit because it's like, it's supposed to be an interrogation room, but it's like the most cinematic interrogation room in the world.
Yeah.
There's just like there's lights everywhere up from below, from the ceiling. There's like shadows, like on the shadows on all the guys, and then she's like brightly lit from like all angles. But it's like a really cool and like this is the most, this is the scene from the movie that everybody talks about. So. And this is the one that gets like, this is the one you absorb through cultural osmosis. This is like the cut to this is like, oh, I know what this is, even if I haven't seen it. She says she didn't tie him up, and she says she didn't kill him because that'd be stupid because she wrote a book about doing the exact same thing. Here right. in the commentary, Verhoeven has like this kind of fun thing where it's like, oh, like, okay, like if if Esterhaus points at like all these other people are just technicians, like, well, this is what a director adds in the movie. They have a point where she takes off her silk scarf as she's talking about not tying him up, and it's like, oh, that's the scarf just like the scarf she tied him up with, and then she puts her hands behind her head like they were tied up, and it's like subtle imagery that's like, okay, she's admitting to the crime with her like her pantomimes and stuff like that. And it's like is that genius or just accidental? It's like, I don't know, but that's what Verhoeven brings to to a movie.
Yeah, that's why we love it so much. It's like, yeah.
I mean, if it's not in the script and Verhoeven brought that, then that's what you could. Also, Esterhaus, well, I guess we'll get to it. She admits to drug use, and then she asks Curran, have you ever fucked on cocaine, Nick? And then this is where she uncrosses her legs, and all the guys like get a closer look as she spreads, and it just kind of reveals pubic hair. But the way people talk about it, it's like she just like spread open her pussy. It's like, here you go, guys.
Yeah, it's remembered far more dramatically than it is because it's like, oh, it's showing pubic hair, which is, for American cinema, wide release, kind of nuts.
Yeah,
but also like, no, this wasn't like a hustler shoot or something. It was no fine.
And then she just says it's nice to fuck on like cocaine. And there's a bunch, and then of course there's a bunch of like stories, and like I don't know which ones are true about this scene, but like Esterhaus is like, he didn't write that in the screenplay, that Verhoeven and Sharon Stone came up with it. And so he like admits to like the most famous thing about his most successful movie is something he didn't come up with.
Yeah.
And there's Esterhaus says the way Verhoeven tells it is that like they came up with it on the day as like kind of like a joke to the crew, like just do the scene without panties. And then Sharon Stone tells a story basically like they convinced her to take her panties off because they said like, because I think she's sitting in a silver chair, and they said that like the white panties are reflecting too much, so you just need to take them off, which seems like a cover. Because also at this time, like there's a weird thing with like nudity in Hollywood where it's like basically if you do nudity, it's like the end of your career. Because either people don't respect you, or like you gave them the goods and now they're bored with it. It's like there's a lot of weird stuff with it. So I just don't know who to believe. Like I could see like Sharon Stone is trying to make like this modest argument that she didn't mean to do that, but like she'll take the fame anyways. I could also see like she was, coerced into doing it and then like was edited without her intent. But Verhoeven says like every shot she went back to Video Village and reviewed it and gave it an okay. But also like, Video Village then means like they're basically doing VHS tape they're not looking at the raw film. They're looking at VHS tape that was like kind of alongside the camera.
Oh, okay.
So whatever, but for
I
whatever,
tend to believe that this was constructed and shot this way.
yeah,
And then people, and I don't think anyone wants to deny it for any other reason, just to create mystique around it. Like, oh, there's competing stories
yeah,
as to how this happens, which makes it more fascinating. But it's like, yeah, these are, imaginative, creative people kind of getting away with something,
yeah.
winking at the MPAA and the American public. And it's like, yeah, okay. It's like, ooh, let's
But
create mystery.
but I don't know. I mean, the argument now would be like, was she taken advantage of? And it's probably like, well, the stories I heard about Hollywood back then, absolutely. But it was to her benefit, which doesn't excuse it. But they all made the movie, so they all agreed to it. So, and then Curran is asking her questions for a bit, and then she's like asking questions back. It's that's suggesting that she knows Nick, but she denies that she doesn't. It's like, oh no, we've never met before. But even though later on she see like she's doing like deep research on him. So
Yeah.
The deepest research, the legalist research. And then she basically makes him like, if you think I'm lying, give me a lie detector test. And so she takes a lie detector test and passes it. The technician's like, you can't beat the machine, but Curran's like, says he knows people can beat the machine, and they're like, oh, I'm guessing he beat the machine.
Yeah.
Because we still don't know like all his dark past that has not been revealed yet. So we're like, well, he's being a cop right now, so everything must went okay, even though he's still being like reviewed psychologically every day.
Yeah.
Curran drives Catherine home. He tells her that he passed the lie detector test about shooting two people. But she doesn't reveal like how he passed it. I don't know if he was like, because she intimates later on that he was on cocaine when he shot them. So I was like, oh, does cocaine get you past the lie detector test?
Well, according to the CIA, just a good night's sleep and not using stimulants like caffeine the next day, you'll be fine. Now, cocaine is a mega stimulant.
Yeah.
But
also it's about because in what I know about lie detectors is like you establish a baseline, and like what you go outside the baseline kind of mean like possibly untruthful or other reasons you would be like having a reaction. So if your baseline is erratic as hell, then like maybe that would be a good cover.
Well, I've heard that like how that works is, crudely, is that there is some kind of like natural social thing we're raised with from being children is like lying is bad, which would cause an elevation in heart rate and breathing, which they would detect as, like you said, outside the baseline. But if you're just a complete psychopath, or you depend on lies and live in a world of lies, so yeah, you're going to pass that thing every time.
But
lie detectors are ways to catch poor people and get them to confess to things. Because if I was accused of something and the police were like, well, we need you to take a lie detector, I'd be like, lawyer, I'm done, lawyer. Which is how you beat the lie detector in real life. You say lawyer.
I'm not sure if it's like even admissible anymore. It's just kind of like a tool that's hanging around.
It's bogus.
I mean, there are like legitimate uses to it, but it's just like it's not objectively true.
Yeah. Well, it also doesn't work like, you have to phrase the questions a certain way. And
yeah. Well, I remember I saw something where it showed how like they showed a map to somebody and have all the coordinates labeled by numbers, and basically by how somebody reacted to it, they were able to like pin down like where something was in the map coordinates.
Oh, okay. I could see that.
But that wasn't like, it didn't mean it was true. It just like helped them with like, okay, right. Now we narrowed down a search area to like a mile wide rather than like 10 miles wide. So
yeah, now we got to get the evidence in this area and associate it with him somehow.
Yeah. But this was still back in the day when the lie detector test was just bulletproof in Hollywood cinema. It's like it proved everything. you know, because they'd have, you know, lie detector tests are still used on like weird talk shows, you know, when they're exploiting poor people with weird stories.
Sexual peccadillos.
Yeah. So, um, and we have Curran goes back to a cop bar and he orders a drink, breaking his sobriety. Curran is suspicious of all the people that have died in her life. And so Dr. Garner shows back up in the background, and then we have a fellow cop is harassing Curran calling him shooter.
Yep.
And then they start to have an argument, and then Curran leaves with Dr. Garner. They go back to her place. They have like a weird shove up against the wall foreplay.
Yeah.
The sex gets rough, and Dr. Garner's like screaming no, but then she like submits to it. And there's also just like an aerobics class in the background across the way.
Yeah, there's always like people dancing and jumping around in the apartment across the way from her.
Which I thought it would be like a weird like reveal, and I guess people get uncomfortable as they're just watching people have sex during their aerobic session. But that never happens. But
that would be great, like if they're just like you see the aerobics and it cuts to the sex, and then you cut back and like out of frame you can see the whole aerobics class has stopped and they're all just staring out the window. It's like because nobody has curtains in movies.
Unless they have like unless they both have opposite polarized windows, but we wouldn't be able to see out them anyways.
Yeah.
It's post sex, and Dr. Garner says she knew Catherine in college, and she's worried, but she's worried about the rough sex they just had. And then Curran gets a cigarette, breaking another sobriety.
Yes.
Then they find that a professor that Catherine had was killed with an ice pick while Catherine was in college. Again, not suspicious.
These are the parts of the story where it's like I know what they're trying to string together, but it's like, oh wow, we just straight on the nose.
I don't know. It's like also sometimes this is modern day stuff. Like if you had to like look up all this stuff back then, you'd have to go to like so many different libraries and actually like call people up.
Yeah.
Whereas like nowadays it's a Google search. So it's like this movie cannot exist nowadays. It can only exist in these times. Catherine drives away somewhere. Curran gives chase. They're like on a curvy road in a valley somewhere. Curran nearly runs into a truck. He like reacquires the car in front of a small house. It's that house is probably worth millions now.
Yeah.
So what's she's driving like a Lotus Spirit Turbo or something?
Lotus Esprit Turbo. Yes.
Okay.
Very fast car. James Bond drove a white car like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But she has another car in her driveway, which I think is just a white version of this car. I'm not sure.
No, it's a Lamborghini.
Is it?
Which one? It's not a Testarossa, but it's it's one of the.
Was it
Maybe
Diablo?
It's a California Spider. No.
Oh, okay. And then Curran stakes the place out till night, and Catherine leaves the house with like an older woman. But then Catherine leaves alone, and then she speeds away from Curran again. He goes back to her place. He watches her undress through a window, which is kind of the only like pubic hair thing mentioned in the script. He talks about like this is like the thing he put in the script, and it's like no, the most famous pubic hair was the interrogation scene. And then Curran's looking up the record of the woman Catherine visited. Her name's Hazel Dopkins. I didn't write down the actor, but she was like an older actress, and she's like credited like in like immediately in the end credits where it says like with, and it's like her name. So I didn't know if it's supposed to be like something where it's like, oh, she's been in a lot of famous stuff. You should know her, but like I didn't recognize most. I mean, it's like some of her filmography. It's like, okay, I recognize that title, but I don't like her. I didn't really recognize.
I looked her up. She was in a lot of older movies, but yeah, none of them stood out. I thought she was like maybe a player from like some Hitchcock movies, but
yeah, no. And so Hazel Dawkins was arrested for homicide in 1956. Um, the
Wiped out her family with a knife.
yeah, killed her husband and her 2 kids with a knife. The dead professor was Catherine's counselor in college. Although that was kind of make that seem like a big thing in movies where it's like the counselor from like high school or college. I've had counselors through college. I've met with them like 5 times my entire life.
Right.
You set up your schedule with your counselor. They don't do anything. I mean, it's not to discount their work, but it's like counselors aren't really like day to day with with everybody.
Yeah, but you're not an early 20s hottie either. You know,
yeah.
maybe they get a little closer with that. Who knows?
They never saw potential in me, so. um. So the next day, Curran meets with Catherine. He sees she has like even more articles about him, and she's using him as like her basis for the detective in her next book. She's using an ice pick to break up ice cubes. Is that how they used to store like ice cubes back in the day? Like you just got a big chunk of it and you broke it up on an ice pick.
The thing with that, from what I understand, is like you get distilled water or spring water, and you freeze it in like a cube, and then you stab it up with an ice pick to break it up because you don't want to use tap water, because if you're mixing it with whiskey or whatever treatment chemicals they use for the water will like make the whiskey taste off.
Yeah.
So that's why you have big chunks of ice with like, deadly ice picks, and it's also kind of stylish and cool. But that's what that's all about.
Okay.
At least in my adventures in whiskey culture, it's like, you never use tap water. Or really, my answer is like never put ice in it. It's good enough on its own, but
or chill the whiskey. That's probably some sort of bad thing too. I don't know much about alcohol.
Yeah, I just room temperature is fine for me.
Yeah, she says he had 4 shootings in 5 years, but he says they're all like drug deals while he was working under cover. She calls him shooter, which he thought was just an internal thing with the police. So now he's like, how'd you know that? She asked him how much coke did he do when he shot the tourist. I think I'm forgetting a joke here. I think there's a point where she like walks away and she goes, "Do you have any coke?" And then she's like, kind of like, he knows she means drugs, but then she's also holding the whiskey, and he's like, no, but there's a Pepsi in the fridge. It's like, but we all know there's a difference or something like that. I don't know. This is like another thing where it's like Joe Astros. It seems like the way Hollywood, especially worked back then, was you just have drinking buddies. Like talent doesn't matter. It's just all sex and drinking buddies.
Yeah.
So
that's really what life is.
Catherine keeps moving in closer to his face to kiss him, but it's like they really like don't kiss for a really long time, but just kind of like hover. And then she says something about like, I think she says something like, "Is that why your wife killed herself?" or something like that. And then Catherine's girlfriend, fuck buddy Roxy, shows up and makes out with her as Curran leaves.
Yeah.
And then we have Curran goes to Dr. Garner's office to violently accuse her of letting someone read his file. She says like that would break the client confidentiality, but like, that doesn't matter in this movie.
Yeah, you're already sleeping with her, so it's like, okay.
But then she caves in and says that she gave it to Nilsson, who's like the head internal affairs guy.
Yeah.
And then Curran goes over to Nilsson and accuses him of like being bribed for the file. Also here on the one of the IA guys is Mitch Pileggi, who was Skinner in the X-Files.
Yeah, it's like, oh, Mitch Pileggi. Yeah, I recognize him. Isn't he the one who puts the gun to Curran's head and is like, back off?
Yeah.
It just like seems a little like hardcore in a police station.
So I'm not sure, was X-Files out at this time?
I don't know. That's a good question.
This is 92. I thought like X-Files came out like 91 or something, but I can't remember.
Well, let me look it up while you talk.
All right. Well, it was just funny because like, oh yeah, that guy, and then you look it up, and like his character's name is literally like Internal Affairs Detective. He doesn't even have a name.
93.
93. Okay. So this is before that. All right. Moran tries to calm down Curran as he's like leaving the precinct angry. Dr. Garner shows up at Curran's house and he's getting drunk, and then Curran pisses her off and she like weirdly attacks him, or like her lips all get like weirdly and she's like, yeah. Like, and she like tries to hit him, but it's like super weird. And then she leaves.
This is a mind-bending performance I was talking about.
She leaves. He goes to sleep, sleep off the booze. And then Curran gets a call at night while he's watching Hellraiser.
It's weird. I like the movies in the background that are always going on in this.
He's like watching the Jeffersons. Yeah. Which I have no idea. Like, what's the Verhoeven effect on that? Like, what deep meaning does that have? Like, I have no idea. Here it's pretty. Here they even say in the commentary, it's just like it's supposed to be like he's having a nightmare, so they just have like a thing on the television that just represents a nightmare. So that's pretty straightforward. So he's off to another crime scene. They find out it's like Nilsson, the head internal affairs guy, is shot dead in an alleyway. Moran says he was shot up close with a .38. And then, so here's some gun guy stuff. Then Lieutenant Walker wants Nick's gun because he's suspicious, and so he hands him a 9mm Glock 17.
9mm, yeah.
Which is absolutely not the same gun.
Actually, a 38 and a 9mm, though, are metric and English measurements are almost equivalent.
Yeah, but
they have very different characteristics.
Yeah. And Walker smells the gun and walks away with it.
Yeah, I thought smelling the gun meant something else at first. It's like, oh no, they just don't know what the hell they're doing. It's one of those Glocks that converts into a revolver.
Yeah. It's a Glock that's fed with rimmed cartridges.
Yep.
It's fine, but it's one of those things where it's like, oh, those don't. But I thought like, oh, but you could. There was like a way you could play it off where it made sense, but then like it doesn't matter. It's just they're just throwing some buzzwords out there. So, but it's fine. So, Curran's being interviewed. Dr. Garner gives Curran an alibi, albeit like it's kind of distorted, because she says like, yeah, he was just watching TV, and I'm mentioning that he was like drunk and like. They were like fighting, and she was the one instigating the fight.
Yeah,
that gets all left out. Curran lights a cigarette and gives the same line Catherine did, where it's like, "What are you gonna do? Arrest me for smoking?" Which is like the kind of the fun thing about the screenplay, where it's just like it basically just takes these moments and then just reassembles them with different characters.
Yeah. Well, it establishes that Catherine like is having influence over everyone.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they're using her lines. They're, modeling their behavior after her. She's like enticing and enthralling people.
Yeah. She's corrupting everything.
Yeah.
And so they put Curran on leave. And then like as like they're leaving, Curran thanks Garner for like covering for him and kisses her on the way out. And then we have Curran packing up his desk, but on his way out, he asks Sam about the boat accident with Catherine's parents, and they find out that the boat blew up, but there was like $5 million each on like death insurance on the parents.
Yeah,
which doesn't seem like that would be like because she ends up getting like $100 million anyways. I don't know what an extra 10 really matters, but
so just pay the taxes on that house.
Yeah. Curran goes home and Catherine's waiting by. She's always just waiting somewhere in other people's houses, her house, whatever, she's just everywhere.
Yeah, there's no like everyone just walks into everyone's house here and is waiting for it. It's like, yeah, the unstable cop with a coke problem that's like killed 5 people this many years. Let's go hide in the dark at his house to see what happens. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, especially since he started drinking
Yeah.
again. She asked why Gus doesn't like her. There's no answer for that, but that's just like kind of a thing put there. Where it's like, oh no, like Gus is gonna die because he's the only person who's honest in this whole movie.
They could have had a weird diversion there. Well, see, Gus is fat and he's jealous. He's never gonna have sex with him. Like they could have just had a whole
yeah,
just moment like that. It's like, yeah, he loves Pizza Hut. And, he's a cowboy. He's a California cowboy.
Curran asks her in for a drink. Curran's breaking ice with an ice pick, and then she takes over, and then she starts breaking the ice. Oh, this is the joke where they do with like, do you have any Coke? And then he says, oh, I got his Pepsi. Okay.
Yeah.
Here Curran's trying to be like unpredictable to mess with Catherine's game. So he's like trying to like, instead of like, he's basically trying to turn into the Skid with what he's doing here. It's like, all right, let's do the opposite. See how it happens. And then Catherine gives him a book of hers about a child who kills their parents to see if they can get away with it. And then Curran asks her about her new book, and she responds by saying it's practically writing itself.
Yeah.
And then Moran shows up and he with some pizza, specifically Pizza Hut. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know if that's a product placement. I don't know why this movie would get product placements.
Yeah, I don't know. Hey, you want an extra $50,000? Oh yeah, we can put some more blood in the scene or something. We can flip that expensive. We can build a dummy car so we don't actually flip a Lotus Spree over it.
Then we cut to it's some church that's converted into a rave club.
Yep.
This is
the movie coming up here.
This is Boz's club, the guy who gets killed in the beginning. And then Kern shows up to watch Catherine. He finds her in the men's room where she's doing coke. And the men's room is it's huge and it's just full of everybody. It's just men, women, whatever. They're all doing drugs.
Yeah, these guys making out with each other. It's like the scene that everyone in Middle America imagines like San Francisco is every day.
Yeah.
And maybe it is. I don't know because I'm from Middle America.
Yeah.
So it might really be that way for all I know.
I'm sure somebody's life is like that, but it's not. It's not outrageously common.
Yeah.
And then Catherine is. Oh, she. They find her in the men's room doing coke, and then she like closes the bathroom door. But then they cut to the dance scene, and then Catherine's dancing and kissing with Roxy, and then Catherine starts dancing with Curran, and then they kind of
favorite scene of the movie here. Very effective scene. It just because sometimes when they do sex and sexy behavior in movies, I laugh because it's like, well, that's just weird.
Yeah,
that just wouldn't work. But the way they film this, and with the girlfriend doing like the weird dance with the guy where she's always looking at him, like grinding against Michael Douglas. It's like, oh, this is an excellence with the music.
Yeah,
it's an excellence. My favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah, it seemed like very modern because because I get sort of like imagine like a rave scene I think of like in The Matrix, and this is like 7 years before that. Yeah. Also,
a lot of French. What was that music? Because I looked up the music. It's like a French music. I think French house music or early. I don't think they called it that then, but
Yeah. I also love that there's just a giant lighting rig spinning around. It's like
that seems like an accident waiting to happen.
Yeah.
But okay.
But I'm pretty sure like Jan de Bont's like, oh, man, I gotta get this thing. It's so cool. But like it's like, yeah, but we can't hide in the scene. He's just being like, don't hide it.
Have it there. It's a wild club.
I think there's also they shot this on a set, so that wasn't some because I would believe in San Francisco there would be some church that would convert it into a nightclub, but they built that as a set. So
okay. That's a European thing too. I've heard a lot of churches in Europe got converted into nightclubs, car dealerships, all that.
Because like everything's so crowded in Europe, you can't just tear things down and build something new. You just have to convert things.
Right.
Because otherwise they would just like complete upended cities and built like roadways you could actually drive a car through. But like, no, those cities aren't really built for cars, but like they also have, you know, public transportation. So, you know,
Yeah.
it's a give and take. But yeah, they also don't have supermarkets. You got to go to like 40 different little smaller markets and take it home on your little bike with a bell on it.
Yep. It's a great life.
Oh, thank God I have groceries for the next hour and a half.
Yeah. One meal down. 2 more to go.
So yeah, we have a sex scene at Catherine's place. I think this is at the house, not the beachside resort. Nick starts noticing similarities between like the opening crying scene, but you know, he keeps having sex anyway. So
Yeah. It's just too good. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, am I gonna get an ice pick shoved in my neck? I don't care.
She scrapes his back and draws blood like she has like razor sharp claws on her fingertips.
That's a nice touch.
And then she reaches under a pillow for a silk scarf and then ties his hands to the bed, just like the opening scene. And it sounds like Curran's screaming no. And then it looks like she's like reaching for the ice pick, but then but she ends up not killing him. She kind of like thrusts herself on him, but she does not. It's just herself. There's no ice pick, and so, but the tension's there that she was going to kill him. And then after sex, Curran goes to the bathroom while Catherine's sleeping. Then Roxy shows up and says she'll kill him if he doesn't leave Catherine alone. And then Curran's like, "Let me ask you, Roxy, man to man, like I think she's the fuck of the century. What do you think?" Which that's the kind of dialogue you think like, yeah, that's what people are bought in at that point with all the ridiculous dialogue in here before. It's like, yeah, people don't talk like that. It's like, so, but you wish that at one point somebody did. So here you get it.
Yeah. This is what you've been waiting for.
But then Roxy reveals that Catherine likes her to watch her have sex with like other men or women. Then that kind of reveals like, oh, people that you know that's close to her she's manipulating them too. So like nobody gets a free pass. Everybody gets manipulated. So
Right.
Next day, Curran wakes up. He kind of wakes up in like a moment of terror, like and there's a note on the bed that says like the beach, and so he goes out to Catherine's beach estate. Catherine tells him he's in and over his head. But Curran promises to catch her while he also wants to fuck her.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to catch you, but I'm still going to have sex with you.
Yeah, I just want to work a few more in before we slap the for real.
Remember, I'm on leave, and this is extra bad.
Yeah, this is like career-ending stuff right here. Like go to prison stuff, colluding with a murderer.
Well, I'll either catch you and increase my status at the police department, or we end up together and I can just use your money.
It's win-win.
Then we cut to some Western bar where Moran's hanging out and he's drinking. He's in like cowboy uniform, but he's just drinking alone. But Moran says he's been looking for Curran, but because he's been gallivanting around having sex with Catherine, he hasn't been home or anywhere else. And then Moran's extra angular. He figures out, he's like, "Oh, you've been fucking her, haven't you?" God damn it, what are you doing? Because he's like the audience surrogate who's like, "Hey, this doesn't make any sense."
Yeah, this is like really destructive behavior.
Then they go to like a diner next door, and Moran's like swearing and eating and making people uncomfortable in the diner. He says they found a safety deposit box that Nilsson had that had like 50 grand inside, but they said it's been there for 3 months, and that like Curran didn't know Catherine 3 months ago. And Curran wants to drive Moran home because he's drunk, but he's like, it's okay, you know, early 90s, so
He's driving a big Cadillac too.
Yeah, he just ate, so you know.
Yeah, good. He's got some weight on him, so yeah, he's straight as a die before you know it.
So he leaves. Then we see Catherine's car is following Curran. It runs him over, then takes off. Curran gets in his car and gives chase. This is like a really cool, because there's people always point out like Bullet. It's like the ultimate chase movie, especially in San Francisco. So this was like a cool chase that was different for a movie that takes place in San Francisco.
There's a lot of pillars and like strange. Looks like a wharf they're driving around in.
Or he's driving up just like the stairs of some weird like wiggly San Francisco road.
Yeah, he's driving up the stairs to cut her off, which by the way would have ripped the suspension out from underneath a Fox body Mustang pretty quickly. But for a movie, it's cool.
Oh, yeah, he's got the Fox body Mox, which like at the time I hated those because the bumpers just made them look stupid. But the aftermarkets they've had, those cars look really cool nowadays.
Oh yeah. And you can shove big engines.
Yeah.
They're that full frame vehicle.
And I guess they said Michael Douglas did a lot of his own driving for the movies. Okay. That was kind of interesting. I guess he does race car stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess he had to do a lot of his own stunt driving for a cop show he was in the 70s called The Streets of San Francisco.
Yep, I remember that one.
Yeah, so he gives chase. The cars end up playing chicken, and Curran wins, and the Lotus.
Go
ahead. The car like flies off an embankment. He goes down there, and it's Roxy was in the car, and now she's dead.
Yeah, you kind of figured that's who it was.
Yeah. Yeah, especially once the car gets wrecked, it's like, well, Catherine can't be in there. Yeah. That'd be too easy. Then we have Curran is arguing with Walker because like the cops are now at the scene, and he's just like, why are you anywhere, and why are you connected with these people? What's going on here? This is all weird. Everything's screwed up. And so I have that being the end of Act 2. So we have Act 3. We have Curran's getting a psych evaluation by a panel of psychologists, including Dr. Gardner. It doesn't go well. He just like tells him to fuck off and goes out and leaves.
Yeah, because the first thing they say, we hear you're having a problem with hostility. You know what? Fuck.
He basically answers a bunch of questions without them asking it. It's like, yeah, this is all you head shrinkers. This is all you want.
What was your childhood like? I jerked off more than
he leaves, and Dr. Gardner suspects he's sleeping with Catherine. And then Curran goes back to Catherine's beach house, and then she's rocking back and forth and crying. And then she says, "Everyone I care about dies." He like consoles her, and then she, with tears in her eyes, says, "Make love to me." And so they have sex again, of course.
Of course.
And then immediately after this, she's not crying anymore. So it's like, oh yeah, this meant nothing to her.
Yeah.
This is all manipulation. She's getting good practice of like feigning emotions though. So
yeah, well, that's what's weird about her character is like it's like it's fake, but you still go along with it because she's so compelling.
She mentioned something about Lisa Oberman, and then she also, she seems over the death of Roxy. And then Curran's questioner like mentions something about. I just read that. Curran's back at the precinct. They have Mary Pat Gleason, another character actor. She's been in hundreds of things. Which I had like a short moment. It's like, are they gonna stick them together with Moran? It's like, you fat people should be together.
Yeah. Go slap ham. Come on. I'll wait. I'm gonna have some of this terrible coffee.
But she's like a juvenile, like a detention officer or something like that. And so after Roxy died, there was like her records got released, and it showed that she killed her 2 brothers when she was a teenager.
Yeah. Like knifing them to death.
Yeah. And because of this, like Curran's now like wavering on whether Catherine actually did all these murders or not, or if it was just Roxy the whole time. Then we have Curran goes to Berkeley. He's looking for Lisa Oberman, but the name doesn't come up. You go back to Catherine's. He meets Hazel, and Catherine tells him that like he misheard her and that he's looking for a Liz Hoberman. And then Curran gets Sam to look up the records, and here's where we find out that Lisa Hoberman is Dr. Garner.
Yeah, which I saw coming like a million miles away.
Yeah. Was another thing, like, because when they have pictures of Roxy, like I thought for a second there, it was like, was that just a picture of Dr. Garner? So there might be a whole thing to this where like everybody trying to look like Catherine. In this
yeah, oh yeah.
movie.
Well, all the people on her web just want to start looking like her.
Yeah.
Waiting to see like Nick show up in a blonde wig.
I'm trying something.
Yeah.
Yeah, which could be. I didn't get this in the autobiography. I heard there's a rumor, or not a rumor, but somebody said that the Curran character was originally supposed to be a female character. And it was supposed to be like more explicitly bisexual for the lead character, but then it became Michael Douglas. Michael Douglas didn't agree to do anything bisexual in the movie, so
I couldn't imagine him doing that.
Where was I? Curran confronts Dr. Garner about her connection with Catherine. Yeah, I hear she has a really good line. She's like, "What am I supposed to say to you guys? Hey, I'm not gay, but I did fuck your suspect."
Yeah. That was a good line.
And then he like leaves angry, and then she's like yelling, and then she has another line where it's like, "She's evil, she's brilliant," which is a ridiculous line, but it's fun, whatever.
Yeah.
Curran goes home and Catherine's waiting again, saying she has a surprise for him, and she asks if he still thinks she's the killer. He says no. She calls him a liar, so she leaves. Curran goes looking for records on Lisa Hoberman. Nilsson, but he's like going to like the San Francisco Police Department, but like they don't have the file because Nilsson got it like a year earlier. So now the file's just in the wind somewhere because Nilsson's dead. Curran and Moran argue about like the case on the dock. Moran is the only one that sees things objectively. Curran goes back to his apartment. Catherine bought him a plant, which I don't know what to make about that.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Look at the evil I'm growing inside your apartment. They make out and have sex again. Curran goes to the hospital Dr. Garner used to work at, and they're looking for her ex-husband to find out that he's dead and he was shot by a 38 one day, just randomly. It's here we have it's a character actor Jack McGee who's been in hundreds of things. He's the sheriff, yeah. And he's the one telling Curran this. And then the sheriff says Nilsson was down there a year ago asking the same questions. But he mentions that Dr. Garner had a girlfriend, presumably Catherine, but I don't know. Curran goes to Catherine's beach house where she's printing up her new book called Shooter. Yep. Catherine says goodbye to Curran because her book is done. So now she's just like she's not like, she doesn't want
old.
Yeah, just absolutely rejects him, and so he's pissed off about that. Hazel shows up there too. And Catherine leaves with her. It's nighttime.
Now, remember what he sees in the printing off, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that plays a part later.
Yeah, well, there's we'll get to it. We're getting to it shortly. So. Curran feels rejected, so Moran picks him up because he's got a lead on an old college roommate. And so, like Boz shared an office space with Dr. Garner. Moran goes into the apartment by himself because he says that like he's on leave. That's Curran's on leave, so he can't go up there with him. There's like this is like one of the greatest suspense things. Here, the elevator he hits floor 4, and like the elevator stops at every floor, and there's like nobody out there. And
Yep.
it's excellent suspense, because you're like, every time it happens, like, what's gonna happen, because something has to happen.
Yeah, this isn't being done for no reason. We've got 3 tries.
And I'm not sure if it was a real elevator, or if they did like the fun trick where it's just an elevator door that opens and closes. It doesn't actually move. And I think they just like move sets around as they open and close the doors really fast.
Probably easier to film that way, because elevators are really small inside. So
Yeah. Well, I remember there was a fun thing in one of the, I think it was in Good Night, Good Luck or something. There was like, it was one of the George Clooney movies where they filmed in an elevator, and like they get on one floor, and then the elevator, presumably goes up, and they get out on a different floor. And all they did is that, like, it's on a set. They get in the elevator, they rotate it 360 degrees, and there's a different set on the other side of them.
that's
or
fun.
not 360, 180. But yeah, it's cool Hollywood tricks. Because how would you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, this is where like Curran maybe sees something, and he runs after Moran, think he's in danger. And this is where that thing that was printing up comes to mind, because like I kept rewinding it, and it's like, what does he see? And he doesn't see anything. So in the commentary, Verhoeven says like, it's when he was reading out her book as it's printing, it's explaining exactly what's happening in this scene, and that's what makes him go like, oh no, I've read this before. So he goes running up the stairs trying to stop what will happen. The elevator door opens, and and Moran gets stabbed with an ice pick. Very like 37 times or something.
Yeah. Blonde.
Yeah, and then Curran shows up just in time as he dies, as he bleeds out. He grabs Moran's Glock, and he starts looking for the killer. And then Dr. Garner pops up saying she got a message to meet Moran here. And then Curran shoots Gardner as she reaches in her pocket, but they were just keys that were in her pocket. Which
just Bart Simpson on a key ring.
Yeah, which they very explicitly point out earlier in the film, so it's like, oh, it's just keys. It's not a gun. And then like as she dies, she says, "I love you." So yeah, make him extra feel guilty. So, and we cut to, it's like the cops are going over the crime scene. They find a wig, an SFPD jacket, and an ice pick in like the stairwell, because they're all like, what's going on here? Why is why are you the only one alive and everybody else is dead? But now they're searching Dr. Garner's apartment, and they find the 38 that killed her ex-husband, and a bunch of photos showing that she's obsessed with Catherine. Now they're at the precinct. The cops are putting it all together with a bunch of information, and basically they have it like, okay, it's slam dunk. It's Dr. Garner that killed everybody. And then Captain Telcott tells him congratulations.
Yeah.
And then,
for what? I'm not sure.
Yeah. He's not. Yeah, he is not relieved at all by that statement. So Curran goes back home. Catherine's there, of course, in his apartment. Catherine says she doesn't want to lose him. They have sex again because of course.
Yeah.
It seems very manipulative. They do another stabbing fake out where she like arches back, and then looks like she's reaching for something, but she doesn't stab him. After sex, she says like, "What are we gonna do?" And then Cran gives like a line that Moran like used. This is the second time that Curran uses it. He says like, she goes like, "What are we gonna do?" And he goes, "Fuck like minks raised rugrats and live happily ever after." And then she says she hates Rugrats, so then he alters it to say like, "No Rugrats." And you see her hand like reaching for something, but they don't show anything. There's another stabbing fake out. They fade out, but it fades back in, and then the camera like tilts and tracks underneath the bed to show that there is an ice pick there, and that's the end of the movie.
And that's it.
So,
Weird.
highly suggesting that she did all the murders.
Yeah. That's the thing you don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was a good, like,
Yeah, it's a erotic thriller. Yeah, it's a good
yeah.
one of those. They don't
I
really
don't
do
usually
these
like
anymore,
those.
so.
Yeah, yeah. No one does this. Well, no one has sex anymore. Everyone's all freaked out all the time.
But this was a hugely successful movie.
Oh yeah, it's made a lot of money.
This was Paul Verhoeven's most successful movie. Domestically, it's beat out by um, Total Recall by like a couple million, but like worldwide, Basic Instinct beats it by like 90 million or something like that. So
Yeah.
this was his biggest movie. It was also like a weird. I guess that's not weird, but like I was trying to think of like because if when I look at the movies of this year, there's a lot of like either like strong female leads or just like female oriented casts. And
Yeah.
I was like, is that something to do with like Terminator 1 where it's like we have a strong female lead, so then like now everybody's doing it, but because movies take like almost like 2 or 3 years to make, like I doubt that's the case, but this just all happenstance. So I'm looking at a box office list, but here's strong strong women characters in movies of this year. So we have, this is a box office one, so the top one's Batman Returns, so we have Michelle Pfeiffer as Batwoman.
Yeah.
That was a big movie for her, which she turned down this movie.
Right.
Although it seemed like a lot of people turned down this movie because they didn't want to do the nudity. So, then we have Sister Act.
Oh, okay.
We got Wayne's World, which has a strong, I always remember Tia Carrera in that. She, she has a band. She does her own thing. She's cool.
All right.
Nope.
Yep.
All right, we're
Hello.
still going out.
All right. Yeah, I didn't stop the recording either.
Okay. There's a hand that rocks the cradle. So I'm talking about like kind of like female cast movies or strong female characters for this year.
Yeah.
We got Fried Green Tomatoes.
Oh, this year? Huh. Okay.
Got Death Becomes Her. You got Alien 3. I got My Cousin Vinny.
Oh yeah.
And I looked up who won the Best Actress award this year, and it was Emma Thompson for Howard's End. So I'd never even seen that. So,
Oh, okay.
um, Single White Female.
That was the same year?
Yeah. Oh, of course, Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. You know, still
Yeah, I
gay.
remember that one.
What's the other one? There's like one more. It's like, oh yeah. Oh, I got Adam's Family. You know, Morticia Adams and Wednesday Addams. Oh, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, see, in my imagining of a visualization of the gap cycle, Sharon Stone in this was always my model for Morn Highland under the influence of the zone implant, because she could be like just super sexual and in control, but then when that's turned off, she just dissolves into this nightmare world that she's in.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, she was always like, yeah, that's what that would be like if someone had some chip in their brain and they were having to just, have sex and do whatever they could to survive. It's like, oh, this is exactly how they would act. But then, like, unlike this movie where it's like, oh, this is this woman's goal, it's like, oh no, you turn the chip off and then you just, you're just completely dismantled as a human being because it's horrible shit's going on. But yeah, that's another thing that, like, that's why this movie resonated with me, because it's stuff like that. It's like when I think of like, strong, female leads, like this is one of the first ones that comes to mind. It's like, yeah, she's not a good person.
No,
she's definitely in control.
Well, there was some controversies that I don't remember at the time, but like in both the making of thing on the DVD and some stuff in the book, Hollywood Animal, like Glad was really mad at this movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I like you have gay and bisexual characters that are not necessarily like they're either a victim or they're a murderer. So they don't like that. And I can imagine, like, especially like the year before was Silence of the Lambs, it's like, okay, so your Buffalo Bill seems to be sort of like you could see as like a trans character and also like they're a murderer. It's like, yeah, all the gay characters you create in Hollywood, they're either victims, murderers, or the comic relief. Like, so you can understand, like, at the time where they jump on it because it's.
Surprised Glad didn't like protest David Lynch's Dune, because you notice that was not in Paul Denis Villeneuve's Dune at all, not yet, at least.
What's that?
Baron Harkonnen.
Oh.
Being this psychotic gay character that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I was supposed to go like, this movie was filmed in San Francisco, so there were protests like outside as they were filming.
Oh, like, yeah. I mean, this resonated a lot more than David Lynch. The zeitgeist for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I can understand. And but the funny thing is, like, in the book, he talks about how, like, they had a meeting with Glad, and then Esterhaus was actually like, okay, no, you're actually right on some of these points, but I don't think I wrote a homophobic screenplay. But really, the thing is that, like, but even though he said he would change some things after they talked to him because they thought they made good points, Verhoeven didn't want to change a fucking thing.
Yeah.
Because he's like, do you know who I am? Do you know I create positive gay characters and it really doesn't matter to me? It's like, I am an ally. And they said, like, well, we've never seen any of your movies. Like, well, fuck you.
Well, then I'm even less inclined to listen to you. Goodbye.
So yeah. Verhoeven basically was like, I didn't create negative stereotypes for gay characters. They're just, and like I didn't get that feeling, but like I'm not gay, so it doesn't mean that to me anyways. But I could see like at the time, it's like, why is every gay character a murder victim or a murderer? Because like you could see at the time where it's like you put that out there, and it's like, oh, this is just reinforcing, some argument that some right-wing Christian has where it's like being gay is a bad thing and then it only leads to more bad things. And so like, violence and being gay is intertwined somehow. And this movie like puts that forth like even stronger. So,
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could. Yeah, I could see that they would think that, but I also like. I don't really associate this movie with the characters having. I don't know, like
It
I never
doesn't
thought
seem.
that like their sexuality was like not important. It's like no, this
Yeah,
just monsters. I mean, it doesn't matter. The sex is just a tool of manipulation. It's just
yeah.
like force majeure. It's how you move pieces around the board. It has nothing to do with exploring their sexuality. So I didn't even like I get a vibe that like oh yeah, this is a gay character. But
Well, and
yeah,
like, and how I remember it through like through cultural osmosis, like I don't remember that being a thing. So, but it's a point everywhere. It's like, well, I mean, they went as far as to make like when the movie came out, they made like a club or whatever that's called like Catherine Did It, and they printed up T-shirts to try to like hurt it in the box office. But that didn't matter. This is like one of the biggest movies of the year.
yeah, we want to see how Catherine did it and who she did it with and how many times.
Which is crazy because this is like a hard R-rated movie, and it's like one of the box office
Yeah,
smash.
this doesn't happen anymore. Well,
No,
Hollywood doesn't take chances like this anymore either.
no. Well, I mean, if it's a R-rated movie that makes a lot of money, it's just a big violent action movie, not because there's sex in it. So
Yeah, yeah, no, sex doesn't really. Uh,
it also seems kind of weird because like this is pretty like out there for the time, but like I never saw or read any of the like 50 Shades of Grey, but like that has to be tame compared to this movie.
well, yeah, probably.
But I don't know, also I felt like 50 Shades of Grey was probably like a movie that like uh kind of watered down uh like SDM for like housewives or something, or BDSM for housewives.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I always thought. Like those were chick novels for women who like wanted to fantasize about that, but not really like they didn't want to know the blood and guts behind, because this is
uh,
described as like sexually erotic and violent sex, and maybe in 1992 before the internet was a mainstream thing like it is now, it's like oh this is really tame compared to anything you can see on the internet
yeah.
24 hours a day 7 days a week. But you also don't see like professional actors doing that either. It's always filmed in someone's basement or something. So, uh,
Or no, people just shoot it from home.
yeah, yeah,
Sell it direct to consumer.
yeah. Direct, farm to table BDSM.
um So I didn't look up like the overall critical response at the time, but I did look up the obvious go-to of Roger Ebert and Siskel or Siskel and
Yeah,
Ebert, and they both hated this movie. So,
yeah.
but that's not necessarily they just think it's crass and unhelpful, and they don't care about any of the characters. But like I don't know, that's the thing with like Verhoeven movies where they like almost none of the characters are likable, but you still have to like it's interesting to see them like what they have to deal with is always the interesting thing, not necessarily like oh I don't like them now I don't care what happens to them. But I don't know.
Well, that's sort of like the Verhoeven veneer of realism in movies like this that he does that aren't like just science fiction or something. It's like, yeah, everyone's flawed. It's just
Yeah.
like I'm putting it on display. There's not like heroic motivations. Like this is just the situation I'm in, and this is how I deal with it. And of course, it's all over the top sexuality and stuff, and it's like, yeah, but that's what you're expecting.
But I mean, also like this, like Verhoeven, like I'm exposing the truth. It's like, yeah, these things don't exactly happen, but they happen in your head.
Yeah, I mean, it's like conceivable all this stuff could happen, but it's also like, most people are flawed. Like they lie to their wife, or they, maybe spent more money than they said they did. Not they, it's like it's sex with three women and this really violent, weird way. It's like, yeah, and that happens, but it doesn't. I don't know. It's kind of like all his movies. There's no like intersection of normal life. Like everyone's nuts from the as soon as the pistol's fired. It's like everyone's from the starting line nuts. It's just how can we film it and make it interesting? And most people are too tired to be this erotic in real life. Like I did, just put a TV dinner in. It's so it's fascinating to see. Um, yeah, at that time, there's probably still a place for this genre, but
um, Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, there probably stuff exists. It's just smaller.
Yeah, it's
Um,
just, as again, it's not my cup of tea. But this one actually I enjoyed a lot, just mainly based on it's like, oh, this movie looks beautiful,
yeah,
and there's some really
technically, it's
cool,
incredibly well done,
yeah.
and it's got so many memorable scenes in it. Even though it's technically probably on some level, it's not a good story or anything like that.
No, 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 it's not.
But it's exciting. So.
But it's the style. It's always the style. I will always go style over substance on things. That's when I start to forgive all the mistakes that I know are there. But it's like, and this was never, if I was ever making movies, this wouldn't be like my genre or
No,
pick. But it's like, it's still kind of cool.
but I
And
mean,
what's cool about Verhoeven is he's all over the map. With, I mean, this is the guy who did RoboCop. For God's sake, he did this. And it's like they're both good in their
yeah.
own ways. They both had a great style, and a look and a feel that you don't forget.
Let's see. Some of the stuff from the animal Hollywood Animal book is, oh yeah, there's a phrase they kept using when they were working on Jagged Edge. Like, basically, the producers came with him with the movie. It's like, we want a blood and hair on the wall picture.
Yes.
Like, that's how they kept referring to it. There's also some weird stuff for the producers not wanting Glenn Close in the movie because they thought her ass was too big. So,
Wow. Okay.
I guess she was just ahead of her time.
Yeah, it's future ass.
um, oh yeah, there was a crazy thing in here because it's like late 80s or mid to late 80s. He's working on this movie because he notices, like, even in California where it's like super liberal, he's like noticing a fringe of like white nationalism popping up. And so he writes this movie called Betrayed about like this woman falls in love with this guy who ends up being like a secret white nationalist. And then like everyone decried it, saying like this is unrealistic and like this is just such a fringe group in America that they'll serve no influence going forward.
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh wow, he
Oops.
was onto something.
Hell, I remember when people remember that movie with Jeff Bridges and Tim Robbins, Arlington Road.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, that's totally unrealistic. There's not just groups of people out here planning to blow up buildings, and like Oklahoma City happened like 2 years later. It's like,
Oh,
yeah,
was that before the bombing of Oklahoma
I
City?
believe so. I could be wrong on that, but
I thought, but yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff where it's like, yeah, there's a lot of things with Joe Esterhaus where he's like socially right about a bunch of things, but then all this just sleeping with random women stuff that kind of like takes it down a notch.
oh no, that came after that. Okay. Script was written before it, but the movie came out 9 years or 6 years after it. But yeah, I always thought I always knew there was something weird about it, but yeah, that's well, and you can kind of debate like, is what we're dealing with now, like in reference to the movie you're talking about that Esterhauser wrote, is like we're not really dealing with like a new wave of white nationalist neo-Nazis. We're just dealing with a lot of conservatives who now find themselves as fellow travelers with people that believe that sort of stuff. But I don't think in their heart they're just Nazis. They just don't want.
No, but they'll take their vote anyways.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah. Like I said,
and all the Nazis have microphones, so it seems bigger than they are. But it's still,
yeah,
it didn't disappear though. So
no, it's still around. There's still people that do it, but. When they talk about this sometimes on the news, they get so hyperbolic about the rising white nationalism in America. It's like, well, really, if you're talking specifically about that, you're talking about maybe 2,000 or 3,000 guys, because like you can't have a job and function in society and get loans if you have like a swastika on your forehead and you're just openly, that kind of guy.
Well, I mean, when he was doing research on the movie, the thing that like scared him is like the guys he found, like they didn't seem on the outside like they were not white nationalists. They were just like, like plumbers and stuff like that. But then like once you got in and good old Christians, but then like when you got in deep, it's like, oh, like,
I got Hitler on the wall. The meeting bunker.
But yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, Joe gets tired of writing scripts from producers. That's when he starts doing spec scripts, and then just like so, then when he hands it over, it's like, look, it's ready to shoot. They're like, oh, okay. Because there was something weird. It's like, well, even his agents are like, no, you don't do spec scripts. That's what rookies do. Because he said like most like spec scripts and stuff are basically like you build up a profile of samples so people can read and like, okay, let's get that guy in so then he can write the movie that we want to make. We don't want to make his movie. He also hates other writers too, because they all want to be directors, and so he was just like, no, I just do the story, man. I don't want to be a director. But then he has like crazy stories where like people do like a profile on him for like some magazine, and at the end of like the profile they'd hand him a script and then just keep asking him if you read it or not, and it's like, oh wow, that sounds super embarrassing, I could never do that.
Yeah.
And of course he milked it. He says like, oh, I haven't gotten to it yet, and he waited till like they couldn't change it until the print deadline, so he made sure he got a positive review by this guy, making the guy think that he would read a script and do something with it when he was never going to do that.
Yeah. Who's using who?
And then he got like kind of a thank you / fuck you note from the guy where he's like, fuck you, Joe, but good play.
Yeah. Well played, sir.
It's like, oh wow, I guess yeah, nobody has journalistic integrity. But yeah,
No, they don't.
but also like there's no, like I said, like all Hollywood seems to be just like drinking buddies giving all their friends and people they find sexy jobs rather than anybody who's talented. So then like anybody who's talented or untalented like have no way to get in unless they're just like friends with people. So yeah, if you're desperate, you'll just do anything to try to slide a script under somebody's door, even if it's terrible, but you have your hopes and dreams. So
Yeah, I mean, it's a horror. It's everything I've read and seen, never done it myself, but it sounds like a horrible industry built on expectations, hope, and lies.
Yep.
And then the people that run it, the people that are actually in control, are just monsters. But that's how they got in control. Which everyone's like, ooh, Hollywood, but it's like, oh no, you've described every major industry in America.
Yeah.
Banking, computers, manufacturing. It's like, yeah, a lot of people have hopes and dreams when they go there, but then they found out it's run by demons. And it's like, well, good luck. How are you going to navigate that world? It's like, well, you take on the characteristics of the demon, which is really what Basic Instinct is about.
But I mean, that's what makes Hollywood Animal good. Like, I don't know if he's a storyteller, so he's going to tell stories. He's not going to let truth get in the way of a good story.
No,
so I'm not sure. Like, if all of a sudden everything he's saying is true, but everything he says feels true, and that's so.
If it's not true, it should be. Or it's how would you say that? Like a simulacrum of the truth, so close you can't tell it apart. It's like, yeah, it's the alchemist's dream. It's the gold led into gold, but you can't tell it apart.
Yeah, the book is interesting because it splits. It has it splits like every chapter, because the first chapter will be about one chapter will be about his screenwriting career, and the other chapter is about him like growing up. Like a Hungarian immigrant and stuff like that. And then every chapter will like switch, and then it'll kind of like some things lead into the others. It's like, this is where I got that idea. But he doesn't. I don't know. Yeah, because I always portrayed as a rock star in his book. And you see him in an interview, and he's just kind of like he's a gruff voice, soft spoken. He's been smoking since he was 12. So he doesn't seem like the rock star he portrays in his book. But I guess like if you get him heated, he just like, because he says like, I was in a refugee camp in World War II. Like, there's nothing you can do to me.
Yeah, he's kind of like already been to the edge of like the worst shit you could ever imagine in the modern world. It's like, oh, this seems tame by comparison.
So it's, maybe that energy like carries some like people are attracted to that.
Now, was he Jewish?
No, but there's he's like staunchly like Catholic now. He kind of abandoned religion, but then he like almost died from cancer, so he found religion again in his later life. I'm
Well,
like,
the reason I ask is because I know, like in the late stages of World War II, before the Germans just started retreating, like they told the Hungarian government, like in 44, 43, it's like, give us all your Jews, because they'd been kind of holding out, and they like slaughtered the Hungarian I think in the greatest percentage of any of the countries that weren't Germany. And so I was wondering, like, oh, was he caught up? Was his family caught up in that? Because
well,
that was like,
well, well, the thing I don't know yet, but I mean, I've kind of read it beforehand, but it hasn't come to part in the book. Well, one thing first. So, Esterhaus is really, he apologizes for making smoking sexy and Basic Instinct. So he
okay,
really, he feels guilty about that, especially because he got cancer by it. And his mom
yeah,
died of like, cancer from cigarettes too. But so his, so like and also in the book there's always kind of things where he gets crossed with like anti-Semitic stuff, and he's very staunch about like squashing that out, like no, don't do that. And there ends up being a turn later in his life where his dad gets like found out for like basically running like anti-Jew or anti-Semitic propaganda for the Nazis in the war.
oh, okay. So yes, actually, yeah, okay, yeah. So there is a connection there. Weird.
And so he basically disowned his father, and his father died, and he kind of feels guilty about not reconciling with him before he died. But
Well, it's kind of a tough one to reconcile,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it's, I mean, yeah, because I've read all the books about that you can read, and it's like, oh yeah, what they did in Hungary was it was very, it was like, why are we doing this now? Like, we're obviously losing. It's like, no, we're just going to do this last thing before we close down all the camps. And it's like, we've got to kill all the Hungarian, and they did too. I mean, it was like, because the Hungarian Jews were largely unaffected throughout most of World War II. But when once the Nazis realized they were losing, they're about to be run out of Eastern Europe. It's like, no, we've got to kill all the. It's like, why? It's, why now? But it's, I don't know.
but I
So
mean, he wasn't killing Jews, but he was just a part of the
no,
machine.
he's just part of the machine. Yeah.
But um, but you know, it's hard to work in Hollywood. It's like, hey, your dad's like possibly helped kill Jews. Like, do you like, are you going to condone that? And he's like, nope.
Yeah, it seems like either keep it to yourself stuff or very quickly condemn it, because
um, he also talks about like Paul Verhoeven always refers to like Sharon Stone as being evil, like even though they worked together on Total Recall like a few years before, like he uh but like Joe here is like kept saying that like Paul is like angry at Sharon Stone because she like refused to sleep with him. Because
okay.
there's like some rumors with her where it's like apparently that was like how she got gigs, was just by sleeping with the directors, and when the movie's over you leave them. And so I guess Paul felt left out of that. This is all rumor, I don't know if any of this is true.
Sounds like
um
nasty stories people spread about more successful actors, but
yeah.
yeah.
um but what was I gonna say? Oh, and then yeah, basically, he also talks about how, like Sharon Stone slept with him, with Joe Esterhaus, like basically as a thank you. It's like, hey, you made my career. Here, I'll throw you a fuck.
Yeah.
And this, like, you know, this is a thing where like, you know, people get mad at him because producers like, well, I didn't fuck Sharon Stone. It's like, who's this guy? So yeah, just this weird Hollywood shit that I hope doesn't exist anymore. It probably does, but
Probably just in a different form. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's all the notes I have for the book. I haven't finished reading it, but like I said, I got up to the Basic Instinct stuff, and I'm almost near the showgirl stuff, which I'll might save for the next time we do it. I went ahead and watched Basic Instinct 2,
Okay.
which, as far as I know, has terrible reviews.
Yes, that's what I've heard.
It's shot in London. It has a good English cast. The movie looks good. The movie's basically fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't live up to the negative hype it has. But it also just, the movie also just kind of feels flat when you compare it to the original, and the ending is stupid. So, but you know, it was an expensive movie. It has like really cool set designs. It looks good, but, and It's basically Catherine putting herself up against a psychologist rather than a detective, and then
Oh,
just
okay.
screwing with that guy. Um, and it just kind of falls flat regardless of the quality. But yeah, I can't help. But that's because it's a sequel, so you're gonna draw comparisons, and when it doesn't do anything new, you're just like, well, this isn't as good as the original. So,
Yeah.
uh, but instead of ice picks, they have like belts and autoerotic associations.
Of
That's a
course they
theme.
do. Yeah.
This came out in 2006, I think. So,
Yeah.
um, which would make her about the same age as Michael Douglas was in the first one, but they didn't play with that at all. But
No.
and then of course, actually, my Lorenzo too is on Comedy Central used to play all the time a spoof movie called Fatal Instinct, which is a Carl Reiner movie, which he directed like The Jerk.
Okay.
But this is more like explicitly like kind of like airplane kind of stuff. It's a spoof on Fatal Attraction, Basic Instinct, Sleeping with the Enemy, Hand That Rocks the Cradle, just noir thrillers in general. So it's just all that stuff. It's dumb, but it's fun. Sean Young is great as the femme fatale.
Okay.
She's talking to the detective early on, and he says something stupid, and she's like, "You're stupid. I like that in a man." Has one of my favorite names for an actor, Armand Asante. He's the
Okay.
star.
Yeah. That guy's got a cool name.
He does the Leslie Nielsen thing where he isn't trying to be goofy. He's doing everything completely serious and letting all the gags around him do the work, and it's always excellent because it feels like kind of my modern day spoof movies don't get that. They're like everything's wacky. It's like no, people got to be serious.
Yeah, you got to have the straight man. One of the best scenes in modern cinema was the Naked Gun, when it's him and Priscilla Presley, and she's going up into the attic, and he's like, "Nice beaver," because he's looking up at the attic, and she brings down a stuffed beaver. It's just so amazing. No one's laughing. It's like, yeah.
There's like some great gags in there where like they're having the one lady's like trying to kill her husband, the main character, and they're talking in Yiddish, and there's like this guy across the bench, and like he's like talking about like, nah, you won't get caught, like most people don't get caught when they commit murder or whatever, or something like that. And they're like, it's like, you like, you understand Yiddish? She's like, no, but I can read the subtitles. And they like look down at the subtitles. But then a scene I thought was in this movie was actually in a different movie. I'm gonna say, so there's a spoof scene in the movie Loaded Weapon 1, which is another kind of like unheralded spoof movie that people don't talk about. It's very funny. They spoof the interrogation sequence, and there's like, it's like every time they cut back, there's like all the guys like are like undressing, and they keep asking like baseball questions and stuff. Like, what do you think about the designated hitter rule? And she's like, it's like, I think it ruins the purity of the game. And it's Kathy Ireland doing the Sharon Stone rule. And then there's part where she like spreads her leg, and then like they kind of like cut to the reaction, and then they cut back, and there's just like a stuffed beaver in the chair, and it literally says gratuitous beaver shot on the screen.
The beaver smoking too.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember this one. Yeah.
So that's all the
Fatal Instinct. Check it out.
yeah, it's on Pluto TV, just free with ads. Like I said, it's a good spoof movie. Like, it's dumb, but if you've never seen it before, it's a good time. So
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all the research I did on Basic Instinct. Like I said, I've never seen it before, so it was a fun watch. I don't think there's any reason to ever see it again, but it is cool.
I mean, if you have access to 24-hour porn, if that's your angle, then yeah, you don't need to see this again. Now, if you just like a well-shot movie that looks cool from an earlier time, it's like, yeah, this is a great movie to watch.
But I don't think I have seen it, but like, yeah, the sex thriller or the erotic thriller was definitely a thing in the 90s and just kind of like disappeared along the way.
Yeah.
But this is probably the best of them. Like, I don't know. I never saw Fatal. That was in the 80s. I never saw Fatal Attraction. I saw Disclosure, which is fine. But I remember there was like almost like an embarrassing like 3D VR sequence in that movie.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That was a computer company.
I'm not sure when 9.5 Weeks come out. I'm not even sure what that's about. That's just like might just be a relationship sex movie. There's some stuff later on that they did, but yeah, they really don't make them anymore.
No,
it's probably Basic Instinct 2 probably put a nail in the coffin, because when they came out with that, they spent $70 million on it and they made like $4 million the first weekend. So that's the end of that. Like I directed it, like John McTiernan was supposed to direct it at some point. I'm not sure if he got put in jail before then.
Literal jail this time.
And then I can't remember the guy who directed. He directed like Memphis Belle and Rob Roy and stuff like that. He's a fine director. He said he just like inherited. Someone had to make it, and he inherited the poison chalice.
Wow, you got the short straw. Got to lose a studio a bundle.
So I don't know how. Yeah, because like Sharon Stone like sued the studio for not making the movie, because she was like gonna get like $14 million, whether it got made or not. So they basically were contractually obligated to make the movie. So they just made the movie to make the movie. And Esther House didn't write it. It was some other guy who wrote some stuff. But yeah, it was basically just doomed to fail.
Yeah, it didn't stand a chance.
Like I said, it's like it's better than what people say of it, but it's still like you'd much rather just do
as its own movie. It would have been interesting, but as a follow up to this, it was a flop.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, if you like what you heard, and how can you? Actually, did I even say like when this came out? Basic Instinct came out March 20th, 1992.
Yep. We did mention it came out, I think. Yeah.
And we mentioned all those other movies that came out in 92. So, Sister Act, Fried Green Tomatoes, Batman Returns.
Yep.
Well, if you like what I heard, and how can you can find us at anchor.fm/Verhoeven Effect, or you can go to verhoeveneffect.com. Takes you to the same place. You can rate our podcast and rate us whatever you want. But the only thing the algorithm listens to is the highest rating. So, do what you will. But remember, you control the algorithm. The algorithm doesn't control you. We have listener support at verhoeveneffect.com, where you can support this podcast at a monthly stipend of either 99 cents, $4.99, or $9.99. And if you support us, we'll just do more faster, because that's where quality comes from. And you can find us at Twitter at Verhoeven Effect, Facebook at Verhoeven Effect. You can find us on YouTube at American Greed Factor. You can watch both this show and that show live and unedited. And we also have t-shirts at belowthecollar.com/Greed Factory. So for the Verhoeven Effect podcast, I'm Colin.
I'm Nathan.
Goodbye, America.